You should really read Scene Zero. It's a great story. And it's coming to a close right now, or rather on the 18th. So we have the next news segment right here, and we're going to go through this a bit quickly this time because there's not actually that much new stuff, because we're still sort of taking a breather from Halloween, from all of those limited units, from all of those new things we've gotten. So this is a bit of a shorter one for now, while we're still gearing up for what could be in store for Christmas. Ooh, could be something big for Christmas. There's probably always something big for Christmas. So until Christmas, for now, let's take it a bit slow. We're going to start out by just telling you that the next link raid is going to be a rematch against the Sandbox Witch. Okay, but then we get to the actual quality of life stuff, or just changes and additions that you're going to be seeing in the future. In this case, all three things I'm going to mention right now is for late November. So not stuff that's coming like next week or whatever, but late November they're going to put this out there. First off, they're going to add new ticket items that you can trade for various costumes and backgrounds and various background musics and all of that sort of stuff for specifically your dollhouse. So you can put all these characters on your dollhouse like home screen if you want. And they're going to be adding more and more stuff to this in the future so that you can really pick and choose exactly what you want. Nice, perfect. Then they've also mentioned that when it comes to score attack, you do usually one battle with score attack where you're trying to score as high as possible, and then usually you have to do a bunch more score attack battles to get the maximum score reward, where you're just going to let it run on auto battle for the most part, and it's not very interesting. So they're saying now, when there's a score attack, you will, once again, it's all late November, you will be able to 3 times a day skip score attack battle, and it will basically act as if you had gotten 50% of your current total best score you've ever gotten. And so that allows you to gain more score every day by just doing 3 skips, and that's it. So you only have to do one battle that you do pretty well on score attack, and after that every day you just do 3 skips, and that's it. So you don't have to spend so much time in score attack anymore. Perfect, nice. For someone like me, by the way, who gets like half the rewards on one battle anyway, those 3 skips afterwards is probably enough to clear the entire shop anyway. But then, also what do we have? We have some improvements to the portrait system, once again late November, where they're saying now if you have a portrait equipped and you want to swap a portrait to another portrait that is already equipped by someone else, instead of just automatically doing that, and you maybe not even realizing that it happened, which happens to a lot of people, now it will actually tell you like, hey, you're about to swap portrait with someone else who already has a portrait. Are you sure you want to do that? So this is now no longer going to happen accidentally to people. And also what they said is they're going to make it so when you sort your portraits, you can now sort by ability. Now you can't just say I want to sort by specifically MP%, for example, but you will just say sort by ability, and then they'll all be sorted by whatever ability they have. So the first one on top, I think, will be MP% portraits, so all the MP% portraits will be first. Then after that it will show you all speed percent portraits, and I think after that it's all attack percent portraits or stuff like that. So all of the portraits with the same effect will all be bunched up right next to each other. So if you want to get crit rate, for example, you just look at any crit rate portrait and you know all of the portraits that are around that portrait are all other crit rate portraits, and the one with the highest effect will be the first in the list. Awesome, perfect. But now we get to the actual important stuff, which is Scene Zero, yeah! So we're gonna get the end of the Scene Zero, which once again will be both a main story and an event story. It will have Battler and Nightmare difficulty and all of that sort of stuff. Everything they've already seen from the other Scene Zero releases are gonna be here as well. There's going to be some extra stuff though. So since this is the finale, first off, they'll have some extra side stories that will show you the story, or it's like some extra bits of story from other characters' viewpoints, like from Homeda's viewpoint or from Kyoko's viewpoint, etc., etc. And they will also finally unlock all of the story and voice lines from Mabuyu's hard file, because that one was not available yet because it contains spoilers from Scene Zero. So now you can actually look at her hard file stuff, and also when you put her on your home screen, she will actually like have voice lines. Awesome. And also there will be another score attack, of course, for that event against Kichitsuka. Oh yeah, the Artist Witch. And the Artist Witch, apparently they said that this one, for this score attack, the boss will do a really high amount of damage, so make sure you have a good sustain, but also the boss, once it's broken, will have a really high maximum break multiplier, so make sure that you can raise your break multiplier really fast. Which, yeah, there's going to be a breaker in this video that we're going to talk about, a new breaker that helps you maybe get a lot of break multiplier on the enemy, and specifically having breakers with high break bonus, so the stat break bonus, would allow you to get the break multiplier really, really high. Except, you know what also raises break multiplier really high, really fast? Ren, because Ren gets so many follow-up attacks, and every single follow-up attack is like 12%, like a base 12% could also be higher against the boss. And if you have like 8-2, like Ascension 2 Ren, she gets like at least one follow-up attack per turn, so that's an extra 12% on the enemy's break multiplier on every single character turn. That is faster than most breakers can do it. So once again, it's a Ren boss because the character I'm going to talk about in this video in just a few seconds is also Void type, so this skill attack is probably, I think they also said it already, is going to be Void type. So that's free Ren real estate right there for a fast break multiplier increasing at least. So what else is there? Well, I guess we gotta talk about the new character. So I'm gonna mention one thing right away. This is machine translated, and it's always machine translated when I show you this video because it takes them a really long time to actually post the translated kit. I don't know why, but it just does. Maybe the person who works on this is going to sleep right after the actual news drops, so they have to sleep first, and then they have to go to work next day, and then they get started on it, and then it takes like up to 24 hours after this has been released for them to actually do it, which I understand. But the point is, the reason I bring this up right now is because this machine translation is really bad. Like this automatic translation, like AI translation kind of fucking sucks, really bad, especially with Japanese. Like I'm learning Japanese. I could probably read most of this Japanese text if it was on Japanese. Yeah, there's no way even for most humans to translate that. So yeah, a machine is not going to be able to do a good job either, and most of this translation is really bad. So even though I put it up on screen, don't actually think too hard about this. I'm going to tell you what she does, and if I'm saying something that looks different than what you see on screen, believe me, don't believe what you see on screen right here. Anyway, this is the Akimabayu at the very end of the story when she's no longer a fail girl, like a girl failure. She is now a hero, right? She's now confident, she knows what she's doing, she can carry the team, or at least the breaker role of the team. And how does she do that? By turning invisible. And yeah, so the way that she works is use her skill, and then she turns invisible. By the way, she's a Void type breaker, you can see it on screen. And when she turns invisible, she'll gain some bonuses. She'll gain bonus break gauge depletion, she will gain bonus break bonus, and she will also take reduced damage. Now while she's invisible, a whole bunch of other stuff also happens, but that's basically how you get invisible. You just use your skill once and then you become invisible for a few turns. It also gives you like a graphic effect, like she doesn't actually turn invisible, because it would be kind of weird if she just disappeared, because she's supposed to still be doing attacks and stuff, and it would be really weird if all her attacks were just actually invisible and you didn't see anything. I guess it would be fun. Anyway, you can still see her at least. So what else does she do? Well, when she is invisible, the following happens through her passive. Whenever an ally other than herself attacks either with a normal attack, a skill, or a special, she will gain +1 magic. Right? So she has a magic system, and whenever anyone other than her uses a normal attack, skill, or special, she gains some magic. But only when she's invisible, which should be the entire battle. Like you start the battle out by immediately going invisible, and then you should just be using your skill often enough that you're just always going to be invisible. So basically for the entire fight. Now what happens is when you reach 5 magic, you will then do an automatic follow-up attack, similar to Ren basically, where yeah, you gain the magic stacks, and then when you are at max magic stacks, you just do a follow-up attack, single target against the currently selected target, which will of course do some damage, do some break gauge reduction, and will then also give you a stacking speed buff. So the longer the fight goes on, the faster you become, up to I think 20% extra speed from the buff. Awesome. And then you can top that all off with the special attack, which does the following. You give yourself even more break gauge reduction for a few turns, and then you also buff everyone's follow-up attacks and counter attacks, which I think currently still only Sayaka has that, by another 50% damage for 2 turns, which is a lot. But keep in mind, these are the numbers from level 10 special. So level 4 special is probably not going to be 50% follow-up attack and counter attack damage for everyone. But that's a pretty big buff. That is a pretty big buff for the team, but because it's only for follow-up attacks, and right now the only one who does mainly follow-up attacks as their source of damage, and is also Void type, Yeah, that's another Ren buff. Another Ren buff, let's fucking go! I told you Ren is way too overpowered, because here we have once again yet another character who synergizes extremely well with Ren. Oh, isn't that great? Oh man, just lay it on us, give us more characters and more bosses that Ren is really good with. Oh, fantastic. So yeah, buffs everyone's follow-up attack damage, and also when you have invisibility, the special also does something else. Now once again, you should always be invisible with Mabius, so it's gonna always be the case. You also then buff everyone's weak damage percent by another 20. That's great. That's another nice way of buffing everyone. So this means, by the way, that you buff everyone's follow-up attacks and weak attribute damage by 20%. Yeah, by 50% and 20% respectively. Which here, once again, like I said, she's void type, so you play her against void type enemies. And if you're playing against void type enemies, then other characters that are void are gaining weak attribute bonus. Like Ren, yeah, like Ren is also another Ren buff. Haha, of course it is. And yes, of course, there's one final effect that the special gets, which is that it also activates a free follow-up attack for her without having to spend magic on it. Awesome. So yeah, her special does quite a lot of stuff, but also just by existing and being invisible, she gets free follow-up attacks all the time. Fantastic. Her support is also looking pretty good because it's 20% speed all the time, and then it also increases break gauge reduction, like as a buff, for 2 turns for the character that you equip this to whenever they use their special. We don't know how much this is, but if this is a sizable buff, like at least 10, this would be really, really good, right? But even if it's just +5, it would also still be pretty good to have, because there's not many support abilities, like support Kyoku, that like noticeably give break gauge reduction while also giving like speed. Because right now we have, like, for example, Iroha's support ability gives a little bit of break reduction, but only like a little bit, and that's it. But having speed is really important for a breaker, so you usually just pick the speed one. But this one, having both speed and a break reduction, could have the potential to actually be really good, depending on how big this buff actually is. And then on top of all of that, we also have her EX, which I can tell you right now, don't go for her EX. She's yet another character that you can just skip the EX with, and it's totally fine. It just gives her +2 MP when she does a normal attack, which normal attack has less break gauge reduction as her skill anyway. And you have to use her special at least once every 2 turns or 3 turns to keep up her invisibility. So you're not going to be gaining much use out of this anyway. It's like barely any MP at all. You also gain more, like, she also gains extra magic when she herself uses her skill over her normal attack. So using skill also means more follow-up attacks. So you definitely want to use her skill as often as possible. So you're not going to make too much use out of this. But you can use her more normal attack heavy to generate more skill points, but it is suboptimal by quite a bit. Keep that in mind. But it also does the following. Oh, if you have invisibility and you take damage from an enemy, you get 5% action advance, which isn't a lot and isn't that much. She's really fast anyway, so she's gonna get a lot of turns. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna be that important. Like, her EX doesn't really sound that great. That said, breakers generally don't have many great choices for crystals. Like, you have 10% MP, that's pretty good. Speed is usually pretty good as well. Like, that's also pretty good, right? And then the third one is like, what do you even use for the third one? I guess you can use one of these Swift, like Swift Grace or whatever it's called. Or like the one that gives you break bonus when the enemy is broken. I don't know if that one's called Swift Grace. That one's alright. And then I guess you could also use a guard instead, right? You can sort of pick and choose what you want for your third one, or even for your second one if you don't want the speed one. But yeah, so breakers, they have a lot of choice, but none are like super amazing. But the EX, at least for this character, is not it. And then for the A2, just makes invisible last 1 turn longer. So if you do want to play her more normal attack heavy, which, by the way, at least compared to other breakers, for most other breakers at least, she doesn't mind as much using normal attacks because she's still gonna get her follow-up attacks very often. But Mifio, for example, she has like almost all of her break gauge reduction comes from other characters, because they funnel MP and stacks into her. So almost all of her break gauge reduction comes from other characters funneling into her. So with Mifio, for example, it's not as big of a difference if she uses normal attacks sometimes versus skill. But with Mabayu, she still should use skill decently often. But yeah, like I said, if you do want to, especially when she's A2, you can decide to use a bit more normal attacks. That said, the second part of A2 buffs your skill again. So with the second part, whenever you use your skill, you get plus 5 MP. Okay, so I guess you do want to use your skill more often. So she has both buffs to her normal attacks and to her skill, but it's still going to be most effective to use her skill all the time. So yes, just use her skill all the time if you can, but it's not the end of the world if you use a normal attack. It also increased break reduction for her follow-up attack, which we don't know how much that actually is. Could be a lot, could be almost nothing. So this A2 could be really good, could be not very good at all. It kind of depends on how strong the break reduction is for this. But yeah, overall she seems pretty decent, seems pretty good. She's pretty good. But we don't quite know how strong some of her buffs are. Like, how strong is her support Kyoko buff? How strong is the break reduction buff from her A2? How strong is the break gauge depletion increase from being invisible from her special? Like, all of these are numbers that we don't know, because even though they've given us the break gauge depletion numbers of the actual abilities, they haven't done it for the buffs yet. So we still don't know until the character releases, and then we'll know how fast they actually break and how good they actually are. And also keep in mind that generally with breakers, you need a very high ascension, because breaker specials get more breakage reduction the higher the special level is. That said, with Mabuyu, it seems to not be that big of a deal, because I think a lot of her breakage reduction is gonna come from her ability, which of course you don't need high ascension to max her ability out. So keep that in mind. But yeah, she seems pretty decent, seems pretty fine. And yeah, that's it for this news. She's gonna arrive together with her event on the 18th of November. 18th is when she's gonna arrive. But yeah, I'm gonna be streaming at that point on the 18th, Tuesday, I think. But yes, see you guys there. I hope you guys enjoy this. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, become a member today, and I'll see you guys next time. Also, shout out to my members, Chai Bean, Differwinkle, and Simpletor. Thank you very much.